All right, let's talk about the train derailment in Ohio. Everybody's been playing their favorite game on Twitter today. Who's to blame? A lot of people have come to the conclusion that it is former President Trump's fault. You can see on Twitter here the way the copy and paste argument goes as it is populated across many Twitter accounts. The verbatim argument, which goes like this. A rule was passed under President Barack Obama that made it a requirement for trains carrying hazardous flammable materials to have ECP brakes. But this was rescinded in 2017 by the Trump administration. That's the whole argument. That's what all of the people bots are sharing across social media. The ECP brakes are the electronic brakes that are supposed to be so much better than the ones that are in place. At least some people say anyway. But the argument, I guess, seems pretty reasonable, right? I mean, this train obviously had hazardous flammable materials. We saw all the images of fire and explosions. It didn't have the ECP brakes, we're told, which, as I said, some experts believe would have mitigated, if not stopped, this train derailment altogether, some experts. And the reason they didn't have these, it would seem anyway, according to this argument, is because evil Trump repealed Angelica Obama's ECP brake mandate when he got into office in 2017. Case closed. Trump's to blame for creating Ohio Chernobyl. No more questions to ask, right? Not so fast. Here's the problem. Even if we assume that the ECP brakes would have mitigated or prevented this derailment altogether, which we don't actually know if it would have, but assuming it would have for the sake of argument, their argument that had Trump not rescinded Obama's law, this train would have been required to have those new ECP brakes and this disaster would have never happened, or it would have been much less severe. That argument still fails. Why? It's simple. Because the Obama-era mandate would not have applied to this train. The law they're all relying on would not have even applied to this train. According to the law, only trains classified as high-hazard flammable trains, HHFTs, were subject to Obama's mandate. The train in Ohio would not have fallen under that classification. Therefore, it would not have been required to have those ECP brakes, and nothing would have been different. Because you see, Obama, his administration, giving in to the pressures from the railroad company lobbyist, like they're accusing Trump of doing, they all give in to the pressures of the lobbyist. But the Obama administration narrowly defined the high-hazard flammable train classification to apply only to trains carrying a certain amount of Class 3 flammables, like crude oil and ethanol. The law, Obama's law, did not apply to Class 2 flammable gases like the ones we're dealing with here, like vinyl chloride, which was in the Ohio train. Didn't fall under the classification. So people can blame Trump all they want, but the fact is that even if Obama's 2015 law were still in place, this train wouldn't have had those ECP brakes because Obama's law didn't require them to. And it's not just me saying that. This is from Lever News, and this is a left-leaning website. They've been doing a lot of reporting on this story. They have some specialties on this subject. They've been going after both the left and the right, though. I'll give them credit for that. It says, you see on the website here, federal officials told the Lever, or Lever if you're British, that the train was not classified as a high-hazard flammable train under the more limited definition outlined by the 2015 Obama rule. That's federal officials in the Obama or the Biden administration saying that this train wouldn't have fallen under those classifications. Even they're admitting it. The federal official goes on to say, the train did not qualify as an HHFT under the regulations. That's a National Transportation and Safety Board spokesperson. Then it says an FRA spokesperson seconded that thought, which that's the Federal Railroad Administration is what the FRA is. I had to check my notes there. So the argument everyone is making on Twitter is irrelevant. It's completely stupid. They're blaming Trump because he rescinded a law that if the law were still in place, nothing would be different because the train wasn't subject to Obama's law. So congratulations to half of Twitter for making the dumbest argument anyone's ever made since whoever it was that started arguing that Die Hard was not a Christmas film. So if you truly care about what's going on in the people in Ohio, like if you're truly concerned about their well-being, then stop playing the social media blame game because you're helping absolutely nothing. I take that back, actually. You're helping the New World Order achieve their goals of global dominance by buying in to this divide and conquer political warfare that they continue to push onto us. You're helping enslave humanity because you're showing that they can continue to dominate us with this divide and rule strategy. Also, why did Trump repeal Obama's law? At least, why did they say that the law was repealed? The Trump administration repealed the brake mandate in 2017 after a National Academy of Sciences study failed to conclusively determine that the ECP braking technology was superior to others. The regulation was dropped on the grounds that the safety benefits were inconclusive and the cost-benefit analysis was negative. This was in line with requirements set forth by Congress in a 2015 law that required the executive branch to conduct a cost-benefit analysis of the ECP brake rule before enacting it. And if it was determined that the cost exceeded the benefits, the brake rule had to be repealed. So they were following the law. It was later discovered that some of the potential benefits were miscalculated during the Trump-era cost-benefit analysis. The DOT at the time, Department of Transportation, they acknowledged the mistake and issued a correction, but even with the correction, it was still determined that the cost still outweighed the benefits, which according to the law meant they could not mandate it, that it had to be repealed. The DOT spokesperson at the time said, with the correction, in all scenarios, costs outweigh the benefits. The analysis requirement is what Mayor Pete was talking about on Twitter the other day when he said that he can't do anything to reenact Obama's rule. And his spokesperson said, proposing a new rule would require performing a new cost-benefit analysis, though they did acknowledge that the department has the ability to prepare that analysis. So the question is, will the Biden administration do this analysis? Maybe, but if they do, they risk coming to the same conclusion that the Trump administration came to, which is never good for Biden. If, however, they did one on that same rule and they came to a different conclusion, then they could reenact Obama's rule for that brake mandate, and it still wouldn't have applied to the Ohio train in this situation. Biden would have to come up with a much broader law to prevent something like what happened in Ohio here. He'd have to do the analysis and then get that one enacted. But that would draw a lot of pushback and pressure from the railroad companies, which is exactly why Obama's law was narrowly defined, because he gave in to those pressures when he was in office. And by the looks of things, it does not appear that Biden is going to be running afoul of the railroad companies either. Look at this. On screen here from The Lever again. Biden DOJ backing Norfolk Southern's bid to block lawsuits. This was published yesterday. The company whose train derailed in Ohio is asking the Supreme Court to kill a lawsuit by a sick rail worker and help the firm block future lawsuits. And we come down a little bit, and it says, in the case against Norfolk Southern, the Biden administration is siding with the railroad company in its conflict with a cancer-stricken former rail worker. A high court ruling for Norfolk Southern could create a national precedent limiting where workers and consumers can bring cases against corporations. And come down a little bit further. Limiting lawsuits is exactly what the American Association of Railroads, the industry's primary lobbying group, wants. The organization filed a brief on the side of Norfolk Southern in this case, arguing that a ruling in favor of the plaintiff would open up railroads to more litigation. It is also apparently what the Biden administration wants. The Justice Department filed its own brief in favor of Norfolk Southern. And then it says the High Court's ruling could have implications for the still unfolding disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, which is just miles from the Pennsylvania border. So there you go. Biden is siding with the railroad company, Norfolk Southern, on a case that could prevent people who get sick as a result of this disaster from suing Norfolk Southern. I wonder what Mayor Pete has to say about that. Probably nothing.